talk about essential tools and equipment in your kitchen. Now, as you can see, there's lots of fun things to play with here, but they are super useful. And I'm really a stickler about keeping things that are useful and not just pretty or decorative, because who has a lot of room in their kitchen, right? So I start off with looking at my knives. Knives are super important. A lot of people have countertop knife storage, which is fine, but I personally like to keep my counters really clean and minimal because I'm always using the counters for chopping and, putting my groceries on and things like that. So I invested in a knife holder that actually goes into your drawer. And I really like it because a lot of times I just want to open the drawer, pick out the knife that I want to use. It just makes me feel more efficient and clean and organized. So I really suggest these for if you want to feel the same way. Now, the type of knives that I keep on hand are really just a few. I think that you don't need to have a super expensive or super professional knife. What you really need is to keep them sharp, because when you keep things sharp, the way you cut the food is going to be clean, you're not going to be wasteful, and it's also going to be safe. When a knife is not sharp, you are at risk for cutting your fingers and more. So you really want to make sure that any knife you use is constantly sharpened, and I'll talk about the sharpeners in a second. My most useful knife is a chef's knife in the kitchen. I use this for everything. It's not a super expensive knife, but because I keep it sharp, it works really beautifully. I use this to chop parsley, onions, tomatoes. I use it for like everything. And sometimes it feels too big on like a small fruit or something. So I have a smaller Sentoku knife for things like that. So again, keeping it sharp all the time really just makes the cuts look really nice and clean on all the fruit. I think it's also really important to have a knife that you use not necessarily for chopping or anything, but this is actually more for eating. And I find these all over Italy, and they're just so useful, but I've also seen them here in dollar stores and other kind of markets because they're just so useful. They're a little bit serrated, but they're not too sharp, but they're great for, just sitting down with a bowl of fruit and, cutting it up. I use these so much, and I know they're colorful too, so they come in yellow as well, but they're just really a small serrated knife, and they're indispensable in the kitchen. Of course, a paring knife is great for peeling fruit. I don't know about you, but I think peelers and graters are wonderful for, handheld peelers like vegetable peelers, potato peelers, but sometimes I just really want to grab a knife and start peeling. It might sound like more work, but honestly, I just always tend to go to my knife drawer, grab things out, and just start working. So if you're like that, these are really useful. And you do have to sharpen them, and they will last a long time when you do that. I also think a great steak knife is important. These are not for preparing food or cooking. These are definitely just for cutting meats. And really, when you're having guests over, particularly for like a steak dinner, or you don't want to see people struggling with their steak. And it sounds like such a small problem, but in reality, you really need something that's going to work. And I think just a small set of like 4 or 6 steak knives are really great. And you can sharpen these as well with a knife sharpener. And this, again, I'm saying is a super essential tool in the kitchen because, like, for example, this handheld one works for a coarse sharpening and a fine sharpening. So if I'm using something that's serrated, you have to go with the coarse section, and for knives with no serrated edges, you use the fine, the fine section. And so I really do use this every single day after cooking, because once you use your knives, they get dull. Now they have these other types of sharpeners that you always see people, particularly chefs, using to sharpen their knives. And there's lots of tutorials on how to really use this. I find it to be mostly intimidating to a lot of people. So I personally don't use this all the time, but I have it because it's a really great tool to have if I really want to get very serious about my sharpening. But I find that something like this is just more self-explanatory and easy, and I actually pull this out of the knife drawer and use it all the time. So use what works for you, but make sure you get a knife sharpener. Another essential tool, and it's not really something you work with, but something that you store your things with, is a magnetic so it's so magnetic that it's grabbing this, a magnetic toolbar. These I cannot stress enough. They are so important in the kitchen. I have 2 of them, and I actually need more. But what I do is I stick these on the wall. You can stick them on the, in front of your, in front of your stove, and just put your most essential tools there so they're easily accessible. I actually have one off to the side where I put my scissors and my graters and anything that will stick to it, because I'm constantly grabbing for those things. I don't like to put too many knives up there just because it can be dangerous for kids or animals if they're too low to the ground, but you can just put whatever, works for you. Something else that's really, I think, essential is this scraper, and they come in rubber form as well, but I like a metal scraper. It's typically used for pastry making, because people are scraping the dough off cutting boards and things like that so they don't waste anything, but it's actually a great tool for just not wasting anything. I use it, like, for example, when I'm cutting tomatoes on a cutting board and there's all those juices and seeds, but I don't want to waste anything, so I use this to scoop things up and the ingredients stay here, and then I can put them into the pan or whatever. So this has actually saved me a lot of money because I've saved a lot of ingredients this way. Instead of fumbling around with the cutting board and juices flowing, I just scoop it up, scrape it, scoop it, and stick it in the pan. So perfect tool for efficiency in the kitchen. Now, let's talk about tongs. I mean, we all use them for salads and everything, but sometimes I don't want to look for a spatula or other things like that. So I use my tongs because they are on my magnetic board or very close to where I'm cooking. And I use these to flip meat. I use them to pick up lots of different things. And I just think that they're more than just salad tongs, or more than just, something that turns meat. So really use these, but get the stainless steel kind so that you can use them on hot food. And then I have smaller ones that I use all the time too. And I use these for, whenever I'm plating, small ingredients, or I have a drawer full of different sized tongs because I actually use them for lots and lots of things. So, if you can do that, great. I think my favorite tool in the kitchen are scissors. I cannot tell you, and I have lots of different kinds, but I use them for everything from opening bags from the grocery store, things that are just hard to kind of rip open, or you don't want it to rip, you want a clean cut. I open boxes of food if I'm buying a pizza or something. I open them up with this. And cutting twine and pizza. Sometimes I have larger scissors that I actually use to cut pizza. My grandmother used to do that with the big Sicilian pizzas. She used to take long scissors and just cut the pieces into squares. And I thought, that's so smart. You're not struggling with a knife and things like that. So I have all different sizes, and some are longer than others, but I use these all the time. So, sounds very elementary, but it works. The same thing with spoons. Again, it sounds very elementary, but I use small spoons for so many things. I don't always measure everything perfectly, right? When you're busy, you're cooking, you don't want to grab an entire chain of measuring spoons. So I keep a small cup of spoons close to me when I'm cooking, and I just use them for, a tablespoon here, a larger tablespoon here, a small teaspoon here, and I'm happy with that because I feel like I'm just not struggling with the whole chain of measuring spoons. So love to have those on hand. Now, when it comes to actually cooking, as you might be able to see, I have cast iron enameled pots, and you have to be really careful with them because you can't scrape or scratch them with metal. And the same with cast iron. So when you invest in those kinds of cookware that are heavy and enameled and you can't scratch them, which is a good thing, you really need to have the type of spatulas and spoons that don't scratch anything. So I tend to get silicone, which is doesn't melt. It's very good with high heat. And also I love my wooden spoons. This one it was handmade in Turkey, and so it's very special to me, but you can find wooden spoons anywhere. So they're great because they are just not going to ruin your very expensive, long-lasting cookware. Of course, I think whisks are essential. I have lots of different sizes. you're going to use these for baking and so on. But I use them all the time for omelets, or if I'm scrambling eggs in a pan or something like that. You know, you just kind of have them close to you, because you don't want to go fumbling and think, well, you only use them for baking. You actually can use whisks for so much more. So everyone needs a good cutting board. I like bamboo or wood, but you do have to take care of them. A lot of times I oil mine after, let's say I've made fish or cut garlic or something like that. I will clean it off with some lemon to get all the smells and the bacteria off, and then I use like an inexpensive oil to oil the cutting boards once a month or so, just to kind of keep it nice and clean. And every time you wash these, you must dry them thoroughly or they start to crack. Bamboo lasts a little longer than wood in terms of like it has more resistance to water, but all of these types of cutting boards you really need to take care of. And I like these over any kind of plastic because they don't dull your knives. So you really want to, make sure you're taking care of everything. So take care of your knives by getting the right cutting board and take care of that cutting board. So that way everything stays clean, sanitized, and in good shape. I think even though we have our phones, our smartphones with timers, I don't know, for me, I am very diligent about using a kitchen timer. This has a magnetic strip on the back, so I stick this on the side of my stove, but it's just so easy to use. And then when my hands are wet, I don't want to touch my phone, or I've got something else going on my phone. So a kitchen timer is still a timeless piece in the kitchen. I mean, I don't think this is outdated at all. So I just really recommend having it, and magnetic too, so you never lose it. So I'm prone to losing things, and so this has been great for me. Let's talk about citrus reamers. I absolutely love citrus reamers, and really and truly, I'm not a gadget person, but these are some of my favorite tools because you get all the juice out of your fruits when you use these. So I have one for oranges, that's orange. I have a green one for lime. And so because they fit the exact size of those fruits, and so you just squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and you get these out. And they actually use these in Mexico. So I think that, people who are constantly making, guacamole and juices out of lime, and they use these, I mean, there's something to it. They're really getting every last bit of that juice. And this is for limes, it's just the exact size. And so if you cook with a lot of citrus, which I hope you do, I think these are great to invest in. They also have the wooden ones where you can just, ream the juice out, and these are good too, but I tend to use these a lot more. And also good containers, always need those. Using a sieve. These are really important for many reasons, not just straining out ingredients for broths and soups and things like that, but I also use these when I'm making jams and sauces. For example, a tomato sauce. Let's say I don't want any of the skins on it, and I don't need to kind of get out all these mechanical gadgets and so on. You can just strain tomatoes in here, for example, and then take a spatula or the back of a spoon and just, do that. And you haven't used any electricity, you use 2 gadgets, and you can push out fruits and fruit juices and take the seeds out of things by having a sieve. And I have several different sizes of these because I feel like they're so useful in the kitchen. And that's why in most restaurant kitchens you'll find lots of different varieties of sizes of sieves because they are so useful. Same with potato mashers. Again, not having to plug something in to when you want to beat something or to mash something up. I tend to grab for this so often. In fact, I grab for it so often I just kept it like in this drawer here instead of off to the side on my my rack because I'm use it more than just for tomatoes. I use it to crush all kinds of things, eggplant, tomatoes, when I'm making some salads or something, or I want to mash something for soup. I actually, and sometimes I want a rustic mash. I don't want, something so perfectly done where it needs a blender or an immersion blender. So these are just so indispensable. Love those. Now, very versatile and useful. Let's talk about, getting the skin off of fruits and vegetables, cheeses and things like that. There's lots of different options here, but I like the handheld stuff. So for graters, I love handheld graters because especially for cheese, I just want to do this and get all that grated cheese off onto a pasta plate or something like that, or inside of my soup dish. And so I like this because it's harder for me to do it here. And then this serves another purpose, but this is great. And they also have handheld ones like this, which I don't use as often, but it does have a purpose in the kitchen. And for these, I love these for grating onions and tomatoes. I don't put them in the food processor. I just stick this over a plate, grate tomatoes, grate onions, and you get that nice juice out of it that you can't get from any other way of doing it. So you kind of need these. And surprisingly enough, there's mini graters that I thought this was a gift, and I sort of thought that it wouldn't be useful to me, and I'm really surprised at how often I use this because it's just sitting off on the counter when I want to just have a little bit of cheese or something. I really use this quite a bit. I don't know about you, but that helps. And then this is a must. Your microplane and citrus peeler or fruit peeler gets the peels off of lemons and limes and oranges, and this gets the zest off of things. So I think if you want to add natural flavor to your dishes, you must have these. I really think that there's no substitute for these two things. And so I make a lot of recipes where I just want to add, citrus zest to a boiling pot of stew or something, and I need this, right? And for this, adding, citrus zest to cakes and desserts, you can't get that sort of, beautiful texture without this. Last but not least, there's always cleanup. Invest in good towels. Don't buy the cheap stuff. They don't absorb enough liquids and we all have messes in the kitchen. Get really good quality, all cotton, 100% cotton towels in your kitchen, and things that you don't mind getting stains, or things that you can sort of, naturally get the stains off so that things look nice and tidy and clean. There's a reason why chefs and restaurant owners want everything to look white in the kitchen or very spotless, because cleanliness is so important in the kitchen, and you really want to make sure that you're keeping everything sanitary at all times to avoid any food poisoning and to just make things appealing. So, invest in some things that are going to help you clean up really well and naturally, and you can't go wrong. I mean, I'm sure there's lots more that, most people would want to add to the kitchen, but these are sort of my essentials. If I had to go minimal, I think these are the things that I would definitely have to keep in my kitchen.